Good evening, our fellow lovers of love, and thank you for joining us on this excursion through the stream of consciousness, through the river of tranquility, and onto the lake of love. And I need to change that, and why we got that kind of backup thing at the last minute, who knows? But thank you for joining us, and everything got all out of whack right here, all at the last minute. Look at this. There we are. Our camera went all out of whack. Everything got all out of sorts here at the last minute, but that's okay. It's New Year's Eve, so why not over here? For those of us on the East Coast, the ball is already dropped, especially for our guest, Max Gutman. He'll be on. He's from the Mental Health Affairs blog. He's also an author and a mental health advocate. And we're going to come in here in a few minutes and talk to him. But, as we enter this new year, it's a time of transition for most of us, if not all of us. The last 2 years have been a heck of a journey. And, I know for me, 2021 was essentially a wasted year, right? Dealing with all kinds of health issues and the repercussions of that. And so many of us have had journeys this year that have been tragic. Our friend Oscar he had a bit of excitement in his life. His girlfriend found out she was pregnant at the same time he was going off to do training, and then she lost the baby while he was out at training. And it is,
so sad.
And the relationship didn't make past the trauma, and so they're trying to work through both of these things. These traumas together while apart at the same time. And as you look back, Betty White passes away, and it's just kind of another example of how many people have lost someone in this last year for all wide variety of reasons. And we're all kind of sitting with that trauma. And, how do we put that trauma back into perspective, I think is a conversation that needs to be had. How do we deal with that trauma? How do we deal with that emotion? And how do we go on and become the people and the human beings we want to? And because what choice do we have? And with that, I want to bring in Max. Well, that'll be fine. So Max, how you doing this evening? Max is from the Mental Affairs blog, if I get that correctly. Let me get this right down here.
Look at that.
mentalhealthaffairs.blog.
Yeah.
And he's an author. And I think Lubby read his book this morning. I had a chance to listen to a couple of your podcasts this afternoon.
Okay.
Your previous podcast appearance this afternoon.
Sure.
And I think talking to you about journeys and how do you go from where you're at to where you want to be? All right. I think as on New Year's Eve, a lot of people spend some time thinking about, New Year's resolutions, how would it become closer to the person you want to be? But, it's not easy, is it?
No.
A lot of us have emotional health issues, mental health issues, mental illnesses, and there's this wide variety of layers between each of these. And these last 2 years, we've had a lot of people who didn't have issues before or didn't think they had issues have now all of a sudden have to deal with emotional issues. Or people who dealt with minor emotional issues now have to deal with mental health issues. And people who had, say, minor depression issues now have to deal with severe depression issues or anxiety issues or the whole gamut. I think we've seen, the CDC came out and said there's 50% rise in a suicide rate. Something like that. It was something outrageous in the last couple of years. And so the only way to combat this kind of, and I dislike your word combat, the only way to help deal with or mitigate this trend is to talk about it. And so we want to talk about it as people like, us. That's why we're here. We're here to bring a little love into people's lives, to try to talk about these difficult issues in an open and free way. But it's not easy, is it?
No, certainly not.
And so as someone who's out kind of constantly talking about mental health issues, what is the danger of having the constant? Is there a danger? I should say of constantly talking about it. Danger to yourself.
Oh, okay, constantly like okay. So I guess it depends where you're coming from. So like, if you're an advocate, right?
Yeah.
Out there constantly talking about the work that needs to get done, all this reform, um, there could be a danger of certainly medical, your blood pressure, getting anxiety, maybe frustration. In fact, one of the earliest memories I have of an advocate in my area was I was at a Dunkin' Donuts sitting with my mother. We were probably coming from a doctor's appointment of our own, my own, whatever. And I heard the table next to me, things will never change, they're never gonna get better. And I heard, calm down. And like the guy got up, he walked out. Later found out he was like an advocate in mental health. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense why he was that angry then. But we can't stay angry and we can't stay upset all the time. These can't be all the devices and ways that we redirect our energy. I mean, sometimes it has to come from a more constructive place, a calmer place. Stepping back and having more perspective. There's a lot of ways of doing it. You don't always. It can be very unhealthy, but it can also be very liberating. And it really depends on how you direct your energy, the information you have, and knowing how to make that work for you in the right way. It takes practice.
Oh, I think that's one of the big things that a lot of people struggle with is that it's not that it just takes practice. It's a lot of work,
Yeah.
and people don't understand what that work means or what it is because you say I'm working on my mental health today. Well, there's so many ways that actually manifests itself that it's hard to say what it is for one person because one person can sit there and I have a tendency to sit down and watch philosophy lectures about a specific subject when I'm struggling with it. Right? That's how I deal with it. I've gone to 15 years with the same therapist, so that makes it easier as well. I have a stable therapist to go to, and that has been a freaking one of the best things ever. Right? Have a stable therapist you can go to and helps you manage these things.
Yeah.
But it's oh, but try so we each have our way of dealing with that,
But it's
and
worth
then
it.
not wanting to judge, not trying not to judge yourself because your path is different or slower or faster or vastly different than maybe the normal.
But
And
it's frustrating. It's frustrating, and like you said, it's work. And sometimes we're like, well, why do I have to put in all this work when the guy over here just has to watch a couple, like you're saying, YouTube clips and redirect his thoughts and feel a lot better about a situation? Why do I gotta, have to work to get out of bed and get an injection and do all these things for myself? Everyone has a different sort of like way of healing, and sometimes it takes more for some people than others, and that's just a fact of life. Some people are stronger, some people are shorter, some people take more to heal, some people can be more invested in them, some people get more directive, like told this is what you do. And everyone's different, like you said. It's just we can't look to other people, and that's the thing. When we're more self-involved and take care of ourselves and self-care, that's the best way of looking at it, because it's no more about everybody else and what they have to do. It's just what I have to do for myself. And when you start thinking about your own healing a lot more and not what everyone else is doing, you'll hear faster, and you'll heal in a way that's that maybe persist over the long term. You're looking after yourself on the long term. The likelihood of you doing better over the long term is also higher. It takes investment, time, energy, focus. Why think about other people when there's so much that needs to get done right here at home, with your own body and your own health?
yeah, it's taking care of yourself is hard. Because if you heard the entrance, my friend has lost his infant. Well, he was going to be a father, and he was, and he lost the baby, and he's struggling with that. And he says, he wants his depression to be over, and it's like you've just experienced a trauma. You've experienced a severe emotional trauma. You're going to have to give yourself some time to heal, just as if you had experienced a physical trauma. Your bones need a chance to heal after a physical trauma. Your emotions need a chance to heal after a emotional trauma. Part of that situational depression is just giving yourself time to kind of process all of that. And if
I
so, if you've got the opportunity to do that, you take it. but you want to be careful not to let it slip into something that's more permanent, right? Where's that line is what's difficult for people to find.
It's difficult, and also let's be honest, who really likes to sit with pain? Do you like to sit with pain? You know in your head maybe this is how you'll heal, but does anyone like to sit with pain? Ah, it hurts. I don't want to be like, like it when you're in pain and you're in distress, it sucks. Black and white, no one likes it. But the issue is we need to actually sit through it or tolerate it just a little bit at times to heal, like you said. And like to do that and be okay with it, and that takes, they call it psychoed, learning how the healing process works, but also it takes strength and knowing yourself, and knowing that there are parts of healing and recovery that flat out just aren't fun. And everyone likes to paint recovery as this beautiful thing, and like flowers and metaphors, and Pat Deegan evokes this idea that like it's just healing is a graceful, beautiful process that just we can all do and feel better doing. But the truth is, I don't like pain. I don't like days when I can't get out of bed. I don't like it when I feel myself getting more psychotic and powerless. Like these are all things that no one really enjoys. So like we need to be realistic and not paint recovery, and sugarcoat it. It is what it is. And being okay with that will allow people to be more graceful and get through the process without falling through the cracks or not sticking with it. It's when we know what we're getting into, the odds are we'll complete the work, right?
Yeah, there's so much mystery to
Yes.
mental health recovery, to even just to going to see a counselor. I mean, we've had this conversation before where we sat down and we said, what do you expect? What to expect on your first counselor visit? How does a counselor visit actually work? I think that's something me and Lubby over here, we had this discussion a few times on the show about.
We have, yes.
Because just somehow just taking the mystery out of what happens. You call up, you make an appointment, you go in for 55 minutes. Well, what is the expectation? And well, the expectation is there isn't one, right? There's a process. Now, from a counselor's point of view, right, you have a kind of a generic outline how it goes, right? Because we can talk about it from our perspective.
I love to hear from your perspective. That's why I like going on these programs and talking to other practitioners and other advocates. I like to hear what is good mental health, right? I spent time thinking about that question a lot as a practitioner, as a supervisor, as a teacher, teaching young students how to practice therapy. What are best practices? What does best practices mean when it comes to mental health? It's a very vague thing. In medicine, in heart surgery, it might mean getting that heart and the replacement going well. You don't reject it. But we don't have those clinical lines in psychotherapy. It's much more blurred. The question and why we're there and what we're doing, like you said, is not always clear or clear from the get-go. So, like what is best practices? That's a very good question. And if, we're ever going to advance the field further or get, people treatment that they want to stick with and all those things, we need to really define what is help, right? What is good treatment? How do you drive treatment forward that works for people? It was one of the few journal articles I thought that needed to get written. Best practices in psychotherapy. And some things, I don't believe in looking to academia all the time or putting everything in this academic jargon, but sometimes some areas of the research and some parts of this discourse really need to get, reevaluated. They're just too critical. And without looking at them a little closer, I think we do a lot of people, wrong. People need the best help they can get. Why not take a closer look at what we're doing, right?
Yeah, and what's effective? I think one of the traps I think as society we fall into is we look for that silver bullet thing. What works? What's the one thing that's going to work? And when you're dealing with mental health, there is no one thing.
There's no silver bullet.
Nothing.
Right. I mean, because I know Levy, she used to have 9, 10 pills she used to have to take, and
9.
And we've got her down to 4 now.
2.
2?
2.
Wow. See, we did a good job. I thought it was 4. Hey, see?
No.
How much I know. We've got it down to 2. to be successful. And so it's changed over the years. But
Sure.
and when I first started my my recovery journey with a therapist, we were treating depression, and it became quickly, we realized that that's the wrong thing. We need to treat anxiety. And once we stopped treating depression and started treating anxiety, the recovery process like accelerated. It was like you just imagine you're starting to treat the actual right thing. You know, just like anything else. If you've got a broken arm and you're treating a broken toe, you know, you're not going to fix much.
I was diagnosed with depression for 10 years. And I was looking through a psychology book, and it gave a questionnaire between depression and bipolar. And I passed the bipolar, and I went and talked to my therapist. They switched my meds, and it was like night and day.
Right.
And so
it can be very scary and very, very good and scary at the same time.
Yeah.
And how our body responds. Good Lord, I will never forget I was talking to someone who was doing a study on meds and how they impact your body with severe and persistent mental illness. So I was explaining to them I went from being on a 400 milligram IM for schizophrenia to a 300, and I'll never forget them because they wanted to know how it impacted my body, changes, all that. So I told them I was driving down the highway, and all of a sudden I started smelling and thinking and feeling and remembering, and I realized what was happening. Maybe I was a little dehydrated or a little less meds were in my system, but I was re-experiencing a layer of life that I had missed from the medication, because the medication, it's great stuff, but it will mask certain symptoms and not allow you to feel certain things, right? Because, social control, whatever you want to say, it helps people find release from their symptoms, but at the same time, you don't feel certain stuff, and there are certain layers of life that I just had missed for 10 years. And when it started flooding back to me and I started re-experiencing it, tears were coming down. I was like, oh my God, this is what it used to feel like to be alive, and this is what life used to feel like. And to know that I had missed that was a bittersweet experience, because, I needed to not feel a lot of that at that time. But when it came back, it's like, oh, I almost wish I had it, it's hard, because I wasn't ready, but at the same time, well, maybe I'm ready now, and look how much I've missed. So it's like walking that fine line, like you said, between knowing what works, knowing what you need, and, and having just enough to get you by where you're healthy and experiencing life on your own terms.
Yeah, life is a difficult journey, and
yeah,
we all want shortcuts, right? We all want shortcuts to life to be easy. Good Lord knows I do. Yeah. But it doesn't. But those shortcuts seem to, they seem to have a cost, right? Finding those shortcuts seem to have a cost, and the problem is we don't know what that cost is until we pay it. Mm-hmm. And so, some people can get away with it. Some people that cost is relatively minimal, or it's paid off in a way that they don't, it's easy to pay for. But some of us, we have to pay those costs of trying to take, I don't want to call them shortcuts. That's actually that's a bad way to describe it.
Well, maybe not enough insight to your decisions or the choices that you've made. You know what I mean? That should be like a shortcut, right? Not thinking through what you were supposed to do that day.
Well, I resemble that remark there, Max. So, my whole life kind of resembles that remark. So.
Yeah, a lot of us, we don't always think through our choices in the best way. And when we're younger, certainly a lot more or a lot less, than I do now. But thank God, because if I invested as little as I did then in my thinking, I would never have made it till today. Oh, and I won't make it till tomorrow, because, the older you get and the less you think about what you do, the more tragic sometimes the outcomes are in life. You lose an arm or a leg in an auto accident because you were drinking that day and you should have been driving. You know what I mean? Like, instead of being a kid when you're 13, someone will take away the keys, or, 6, you know what I mean? Like, there are barriers and there are these checks that aren't in place when you're older, where you could just lose so much more, and it'd be so hard to rally back from there. And that's a scary thought.
No, I completely agree. September, actually, I can still remember the day. It was September 11th, the last time I drove my car because my vision is going bad because of some health issues. And
Hmm.
so, I'm a professional driver. So having to say, put those keys down, it's not just the emotional decision. It's, I've been driving since I was 14. That was my living. That was my livelihood. That's how I make money. But yet, I'm also have a responsibility to the rest of the world to be safe.
Exactly.
And I've been preaching safety. I've been talking safety. I have a safe driving record for a reason, and it's because I can make that decision that what, it's time to put the keys down. Even though in retrospect, I probably put the keys down a few days late. But
Yeah.
nothing happened. So
Sure.
maybe
It's
not.
hard to
But
let go. I get it. I get it. We don't always want to, have that last drink or, not, you know, boogie board till you're into your 50s. Like maybe it's time to just stop. But you know what? Everyone wants that one last trip, that one last journey, just to feel and experience life. But you're right. The earlier we back off, sometimes the better, because we can take things too far and too old, or it's just it's like can I still? I think back to working, and I want to work more now and more full time, and I keep saying to myself, you know can I, will they give me the Enterprise one last time? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
how old be out there roaming the galaxy and doing your work, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll make it to Shatner's age. I probably won't, but still, my point, I think.
Yeah,
You know,
no. I've got that facing me here because I went from last a couple of years ago. I was running, yeah, 2020. I ran for public office, and so I'm kind of faced with that decision here coming again. Someone's gonna be mad at me if I do, uh, because it's not necessarily healthy for me, right? It's a stressful thing, but at the same time, it's helpful for my psyche. It's the same thing. It's not healthy for my nerves, but it's healthy for my emotions. So it's this weird dichotomy thing. But given the health of the last year, I probably shouldn't, because my mom will kill me as well. But so I have to make this decision. That's not easy. You've got this one decision that you can't totally dismiss ego, right? The ego's sitting there playing a part of this role. You've got 50,000 people to vote for you. People look for you for your opinions. They want to hear what you have to say, all
right?
that kind of thing.
I
You're a member of you're an active member of your community versus it wasn't really great for your stress levels, and it may very well have led to you having the health issues you had in the year following. So maybe it's not the world's greatest idea. There's and finding that balance is difficult for everybody. And I think me having this discussion here, despite she not wanting to hear it, helps me work through whether that should be a yes or a no, or maybe I'll think about it in 2 years instead of this year. Right? This doesn't have to be this year of thing. We can make smarter decisions for both our community and our health at the same time. You don't have to make immediate decisions. I'm 52. I still have time, right?
hope you have a long time. I just want to say that eventually, you know, we can sort of rely on our physical health a little bit, or at least I can. I have a severe mental health disorder, illness, whatever you want to call it. And there are times, especially earlier on in my recovery, like in my 20s, I leaned on my health. Are you kidding me? I went back to grad school 2 years after my break. Okay, 2 years. Most people, they never go back ever, and if they do, 5, 10 years down the road, I went back after two because I leaned on my physical health. I also had better meds, right? I wasn't taking fluorescein. I was atypical generation, right? We could go out there and do a lot more with better meds and not be as tired and sedated. But the fact of the matter is, I leaned on my health a lot. I was 20 something years old, and with a major mental health disorder, yeah, that wears on the body, but at 20, not as much as 30, and definitely not as much as 40. I couldn't go back to school now and do what I did then, and a lot of things. And when we lean on our physical health, if our mental health is impaired, there's only so long you can do that. And with certain disorders and meds, you have to be very careful. For example, I was in an Abilify injection for over 10 years. That was my stabilization med after the state hospital. Well, because I'm older now, 10 years older, and my body's not the same, and all this stuff, I'm putting on weight faster, right? Getting heavier, getting all these health issues because I'm not 20 and my body's not tolerating the medicines it used to. So like, I can't lean on that aspect of my health to like sort of get by anymore. And the sooner we nip it in the butt and start saying we're going to make overall healthier decisions for our mental and physical health, it's not going to be sustainable, and it's not something you can do forever. So that's why we have to be so good about every aspect of healing and every aspect of our health, because when one thing is compromised, it's going to be a chain of events, and you better believe it, until eventually you go from mildly distressed to totally incapacitated. There's a line that, you can see it clinically. People just break down more and more, further and faster over time. And if you're not careful and do the work when you need to, you won't live as long as and be as successful and healthy in the life that you have while you have it. So be good to yourself while you have it. That's the only way you're gonna have it, as long as you do.
Yeah, one of the things we try to do as parents, not together because we're parents to different kids, but we educate our kids about this. My daughter has anxiety disorder. My youngest son is autistic, and so one of the things we tried to do was educate them about these mental health issues. And I know she was very open with her children about the mental health issues. And so, how do we get the greater society to be that open to children about talking about mental health issues in a constructive way? Because we can't just tell children, beware of depression or watch out for anxiety disorder. How do we actually approach these in constructive ways?
I think when we get a better idea of what these disorders are and what they mean and what it means to think about being sad or what it means to be depressed, because everyone has a different idea of what mental health is, right? And everyone has a different idea of what depression is. Are they symptoms? Is this symptom of a trauma, or is this a situational thing? Is it temporary? There's all these aspects of how symptoms manifest and why they do, and if they are symptoms or not, or just a cultural societal plague. We have to figure out what's really going on and what it is we want to work on before we even are able to have a conversation about what it is. Because if you don't know what you're working with, how could you possibly educate someone on what it is they're dealing with, right? It's like, what is this? And then you're like, so you're doing it, you have to know it's water, right? Before you know it's okay to drink. So like, how are you going to teach someone about hydration if they don't know what it means to, hydrate every once in a while?
Yeah, if someone's never been mentally healthy, how do they know what mental health is?
Yeah, exactly. So these are layered conversations, and that's why in my blog, it's intersectionality at its finest. I like to think of it as, because I try to make it clear that there are so many ways. Perception is so fluid, and so is mental health, that if we're not looking at all the intersections about what makes this a real discourse so challenging to wrap your mind around, then we're never going to have a real conversation, like you're saying. There's so many platforms out there that are so, like, for example, I love Man in America. They publish me a lot. But, recently I sent in a manuscript, right, about brokenness. I had a recent epiphany, if I can share for a second. When I was sick, very young in high school, before I got very sick, my brother gave a book to my parents called "I'm Not Sick, I Don't Need Help." All right, note in the field. And I avoided it for 20 years, even after becoming a practitioner, because it reminded me of that originary moment of getting sick. I don't avoid a lot of stuff. I avoided that. Finally listened to it. And it really, really crystallized why it's not okay to use certain language interchangeably. Because sometimes words mean what they are, right? An illness can really connotate there might be a getting better, a repair, a healing, but some shit's just broke, right? Transmission shot, it's shot. It's shot, it's done. it's done. That car's not moving anymore, right? And people have to realize with mental health and certain symptoms and certain disorders, some neurons and some brain tissue, it's just fried. It's done. Whatever, it died. It's broke. It's not there anymore. It's not working. Not going to be repairable. So at that point, it's not an illness. That's not. These are aspects or pieces of your brain tissue, your organic health that's just broken, and they rejected it because they're like, well, we want to see systemic changes, and this reifies the whole idea that psychiatry can help. Yeah, because if you refocus treatment and actually tell practitioners, don't focus on what's broken, focus on what you can repair, then maybe the system might be more effective in helping people. You know what I mean? And that's okay. The whole idea should be helping and teaching people how to get that work done, disseminate good mental health, like you're saying, and really have change on a more global level. And if we restrict that change from happening and interrupt the real word, the gospel of what's good practices from getting out, what are we really doing? Who are we really helping? It's ridiculous.
We seem to focus so much on getting people back to normal, whatever the hell normal is supposed to be, that we don't get them back into. Can we get them to function the way they need to function in life?
Exactly.
Who the hell cares what normal is? Can they function? Can you get them to the place where they're not hurting themselves or their community? Sure. And maybe these can be a benefit, but can we get them to function?
Yes. Focus. Therapists need to redirect the work on what they can actually help the person with. Sometimes they're helping people with this idea of, well, I think the client would do better if they worked on this. Well, the client doesn't need to work on that. They need to work on something that is workable, one, and two is that's going to benefit them in their own life. That's why if you're not client-centered or person-centered, you're really a therapist that has an agenda. And these agendas are, they interrupt what could be real healing for a lot of people who need it.
Yeah. So, all right. So Lovey's going to go take a quick break. And I think if we get a chance, you have a book out. If you want to get a chance to to promote your book a little bit.
Oh, sure. I'd like to talk about my book.
So we're talking about how you're out of your comfort zone on the
what?
Being on camera.
Yes, I am. But I'm getting used to it. It's more user friendly. We get more viewers. People want to see me. They don't want to just see a picture.
Sure. Okay.
All right.
Cool.
All right. So you're already back? All right. Lubby's back. Max has the book. And I know Lubby had a chance to read his book. Do you have any questions about Max's book?
I don't have any questions, but I would like to say your tenacity is admirable. I can't. You don't say no in the face of any adversity. You have persevered, my friend. Oh my goodness.
Thank you. It's my book. This one, right? University on Watch.
Yes, University on Watch. I'll put the Amazon link at latenightLove.us tomorrow.
Sure, with this one, I wrote a few. It's funny, and people pick up on that sort of quality about me in each of these books. I'm really a little relentless. I'm relentless. I'm a relentless person. In a lot of ways. It doesn't always translate well, like you've read in the book. When I was younger and I didn't put all this thinking into my decisions or couldn't because of what was going on with me, it didn't always work out for me. So, I sort of had to learn how to make relentless work for me.
So for me, I'm not a natural writer. So, I'm more communications, conversational. I'm not a natural writer. So anybody who can sit down and actually get thoughts out of their head and onto paper, it's an amazing thing for me because it's just I struggle with it. It's even just writing an email, just normal emails to my constituents or to my communities or whatever I have the number of things I have to do. I'm terrible about it. So, so people who can actually get that process onto paper, it's kind of an astounding thing and actually complete it.
Wow.
What was it? There was a friend of mine posted a meme. She said, I respect every authors because I know that what happens is they spend 3 years yelling at a screen, yelling at a screen. I'm no good. I can't write. I'm terrible. I'm terrible. And about 2 months of actual writing.
Very true. Actually, at least the brevity wrote these books very quickly, each of them. But I never stared at a screen and was frustrated. I love writing. I love it's therapeutic for me. It always has been. It's always been something that soothes me in very, very turbulent and dark waters. I don't know if you remember when you're reading, I mean, the book is interesting in the sense that uh, so it follows sort of almost two timelines. I quote at the very beginning of the book and throughout, and I explain in the preface how it works. So there's like the book and like the story in each chapter, but a lot of them will start off with this here a a blurb. So like it's like like a couple sentences. Let's see here in quotes right here in certain chapters. So what happened was this book I wrote now, but back in 2008 when I was experiencing first, the onset of my schizophrenia symptoms, um, I ran into this professor who I ended up living with of strategic management. She taught me that the one way to get through my situation was to write. And I was an English major, so I believed her for a lot of reasons. And get published. I had to get published. She was saying, and get my story out there. And she was an advocate herself, and also an activist. But she taught me that the story had to get out there. The only way for this to get you to get legitimacy as in the situation that you were in was for it to get academically solvent, in a journal or something. So, like, as you're reading my book, you'll see that I'm talking about what's happening around me in this academic jargon, and it gets more and more scary actually as it goes on in very not so subtle but subtle ways. Like, I'll talk about man's inhumanity to man and something, but I'm talking about my friend who is being mean and cruel to me, his inhumanity to his fellow man, his friend. And I'll talk about, you know, other things in a very abstract way because I was seeing life in more abstract terms. And that's sort of like how psychosis sort of works. You see the world and perceive it differently. And when you go back into these little glimpses, you almost see the world through the vision and scope that I was seeing it in. And you know, sometimes it's good to go back and see the world the way we saw it. It certainly helps us appreciate what we have now. But that's what I was doing. It was very cathartic when I wrote this book. I let go of a lot of anger that I had. I was very, very angry for a long time about how I was treated as an undergraduate student in upstate New York when I was getting sick. I was applying for graduate school and becoming more and more floridly psychotic and out of it and disconnected. And the department really ostracized me and took judicial action. I was chained to a pole in the police barracks, walked out in handcuffs. A lot of horrible things happened that I needed to let go if I was ever going to get on and move on in my life. Even though I'd gone back there for graduate school, it was a different department. I never had any closure. I was 10 feet then for the people who had harmed me so much. And whether I was a victim or let myself become a victim, the important was I needed to heal from it and had it until I wrote this book. And when I wrote this book, I really, things started to, really click. I started having all these insights into my health, and I started writing more and more, and it became almost this, rabbit hole where on the other side was like a little bit of peace and serenity from what had happened years ago. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, in a way you can think about it out of a story of kind of how you built your own redemption, right? It's you talk about how you had to let go of the anger that you had built, and which I something I can actually kind of relate to. undiagnosed anxiety disorder, and you realize as an adult, hey, I had an anxiety disorder, and school was really a crappy place for me to be. They should have known. But then you have to realize, well, back in the 70s and 80s, no one knew. No one knew
Sure,
that, like,
exactly.
that you shouldn't take a 12-year-old kid with anxiety disorder and stick him in a school with 1,500 people. It's not the world's greatest idea.
Right, right.
So I can drop that angle, but when I look out and I see that it's still happening today, that we're still doing that same thing today, that is hard for an anger that's hard for me to drop. And
Yeah, totally.
and so how do we transition, say, our educational systems, or is it even our educational systems? Maybe it's that we are our own thought processes as parents and grandparents, and how do we get it to a point where we can understand that we have to treat each child again as an individual so we don't harm them? Maybe, the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. So what are we doing as the systems we are creating, whether it's educational systems, healthcare systems, run down the list? What can we do to make this better so we don't create so much harm in the first place?
Well, there's a lot there. I mean, like, these systems are made up of people, all right? A lot of them are, at least. I know here, our SPOA or our county mental health system, right? I was on the phone once. I mean, I was speed up the process, whatever. I lost my job. I was already on the list. Anyway, I call up SPOA director, and we're talking, and she said, "Oh, Max, system, it's broken." I'm like, "Yeah? Are you kidding me? You are the system. What is wrong with you? How can you just talk to me as if you don't know? I don't know how this works." And I got so angry, and I was so upset how this person could basically say, "Well, system's broken." I'm thinking, because you gone broke the system, you are what's wrong with mental health. You're not doing anything to fix it, and now you want me to be okay with the brokenness of it. Like, if that's not enough to make you, lack of a better word, insane, I don't know what is. But what we can do though is, right, today, in the now, redirect that energy and say, okay, so why was this person even in the position where they were able to do what they did, get away with it, and allow for future people to run into this problem? That's something that I do in my work. That's like where my area of focus is. My friend once said to me, "Max, you gonna stick your finger to everyone who wronged you, every institution, every law, every this, every that," because that's sort of what I do. It's like a personal hobby of mine, almost like a little thing. I take that energy where, like, shit went wrong, and I go in and I try to figure out why it went wrong, and I figure out what we could do to fix it, reform it, change it, so it doesn't harm other people. That's my work. I do that in all of my writing. There's always a purpose and an aim. The end result is always how these problems that have persisted so long aren't persisting any longer, and I'll take it and I'll, like, write a paper about SPOA, and I'll talk about this person and this situation that happened to me through my lived experience, and say, see, that has to stop. This is why it happened. This is what we can actually do to fix it clinically, right? And that's why I went back for my training, so I could give people the terms of the language to make these changes happen, and make it happen. And sometimes when I see it happen and see the changes occur, that's what, like, makes me feel okay. Like it's good that I'm doing the work. I sit on a committee for the Department of Mental Health and Hygiene in New York City. It's called a CAB committee. Basically, they're consumers who look at new laws, new regs coming down the pike, and how changes are going to happen within mental health, at least on the state level. And we give our guidance and input depending on our experiences. So, like, everything that I do is really invested in change, reform, advocacy, but in a way that's going to make it happen. So I don't sit here 10 years later and say, wow, how that lady, I'm still on the list for housing. Yeah, it's a broken system. Maybe I should call that lady who rejected me 5 years ago. Maybe she'll treat me better this time. No, she won't. She won't until she's fired. She won't until she's not a part of the system anymore and looking for other work. I hate to be like, wow, Max, did you just say that? No, I've walked into meetings with my mother earlier on. she walked in, we'd go live, right, in a meeting like I'd have, because, as a consumer, when the meeting's not going to go well. You know when they're setting you up for something, or as a practitioner, I know what language you're going to use to call me in and say something. So, I have this case manager who basically for 2 years, they were billing fraudulently. They weren't meeting with me. And then all of a sudden, I'd call and he wouldn't pick up the phone. I'd leave all these messages. So I go in with my mother when they called me into the agency, right? She goes live on Facebook. This director is going on and on and on about how I'm hard to work with, difficult to engage. He's too high functioning, rambling off all this shit you're not supposed to say, ever. And she she lost her job. And I don't think everyone should go into meetings secretly and videotape stuff to later expose them. But if you know someone's doing wrong and harm, do what you need to do to get them out before they harm other people in a way that's safe and, of course, non-threatening. But, that's just an example of the sort of thing I'll do if I really believe, it needs to get done. Because if they bill 2 years without meeting with me, imagine how many people they're billing for that are actually out there getting sick and relapsing because they're saying they're meeting with people when they're not. You have to think about it. What the implications are for negligence and all these things, and we got to be out there making sure it doesn't happen. So when I get off on and that energy you talk about, put it into making things, making a better place for people. Why not, right? And see if you can. If you can't, ask for help and read another book until you know what to do.
Yeah, and what we try to do is, try to make a better place by spreading love. And
I feel it. I feel the love. It's great.
It's because it's what we can do.
Yeah.
Right. One of the reasons I started this is because I figured that I didn't want to dive full bore into politics, and I didn't want to dive full bore into mental health advocacy because I figured I'd lose my soul if I did one. So I figured I put one foot in each. I could have a nice stable balance that could keep each other from overtaking my life. And so I said, so what can I do? And so I can spread love, and that spreads both. And for me, it takes both care of the politics and this my love of humanity, because my politics is basically because I'm a humanist, right? I love humanity. That's why I engage in politics. That's why I engage here.
Well, that's why we're engaging. I'm a humanist too. I believe people shouldn't be just discarded. We need to take people and their value for what they have and embrace everything that is about what makes them who they are. That's why I was so attracted to this program and the work that you folks do. And you're right. That's what we need to do. We need to do what we can do, what we love doing. And that's the only way we're going to be able to keep doing it for at least enough time to really make that change happen, right?
Yeah, it's, these changes don't happen overnight. And I may not see the changes I want to see, right? I may pass away, before the world gets to the world I think we should see. But that's okay as long as we're getting to that direction. As long as we're continually moving forward, it's okay that you don't go as fast as you want to go, that you think you should go. It's okay that your recovery takes a little while longer than you would like, because maybe what you would like isn't reasonable. That's what I've had to accept this last year. My physical health has not recovered nearly as quickly as I would have liked. And I just have to accept it, right? I've done everything I can do, but it's just taking a long time. And that's just the way it's going to be. And I have to accept it because I'm still doing everything I can do, right? That's all I can do. I can't do more than you cannot do more than you can do. And so I think if we all just do that, just try to do what you can do and be a little bit better tomorrow than you are today, a little bit better human being next year than you were this year, a little bit better of a community member than you were, I think, next thing you know, we'll turn around, just like when you're raising kids. Next thing you know, you turn around, your child was 7 one day and 17 the next. Well, one day your life is hard, and next day your life is still hard, but you have a smile on your face.
Right. That's what it's all about. Like what happened to that time. It's funny because you bring up a really important point. Advocates and people that want to see good things happen for the world. It's funny because they don't always want things to see that for each other, and don't always see that change is good. And that's what I think complicates this work a lot. especially as an advocate. Advocates don't always see eye to eye. The late Darby Penny, rest her soul, has said vicious and foul things to me of social media, that I'm a threat and a menace to people with disabilities. And here I'm thinking, wow, I'm a menace to my, what does this mean? Where's this coming from? And she had a lot of hurt, I was told, in her life, and harm that has happened to her, and saw practitioners as very people that harm people. And I get that. In her day, they did. In my day, I'm a practitioner myself. I'm not harming anyone. I'm doing this to learn about myself. And, as what she saw as menacing, I saw as healing. You know what I mean? So, it's funny because what's good for me might not be good for you. But as long as we're able to respect each other's choices, right? And what makes them, human, and what they want for themselves, as long as it's not harming me and it's working for you, I'm all for it. Be yourself. Be the best possible you can be, right?
Yeah. Things don't. Some people like running. Some people like lifting weights.
Sure.
Some people like using exercise machines.
Yeah.
Some people don't like exercise, but they might like to go out and play racquetball or something. So that's how they get their exercise. All of that is perfectly fine. But what's not fine is sitting on the couch eating a bunch of donuts all the time, right? Nothing wrong with eating donuts on the couch, but you probably shouldn't do it all day, every day.
Sure.
It's not good for you long term. It's a strange analogy, but
that's an astute one, I think. Not everyone is going to go out there and do wonderful things for the world and be the next person that saves humanity from this or that. We all don't grow up and say, I want to be Pat Deegan. Some of us have other choices, others desires, other goals. We want to be a mechanic, or we want to go into medicine, or any number of things. And I think as long as people support each other in their choices and in the, like we said, self-determination, be who you want to be, I think the world will be that much of a better place. I think that.
Yeah, I think the butterfly effect is real, right? You flap your wings with love. You spread that love around, and you have no idea where that love vibration stops.
Oh, it's
but
huge.
I do know we are about out of time. If you have anything left, you got anything else you want to cover, Max?
We said a lot here. We talked a lot about what it means to, I think, give love, give empathy, give support. What is good mental health? What is good health? And this was a very productive conversation, but it was also one that I think is, hopefully is going to give people a little bit more comfort around so many issues that, notoriously been discomforting. No one ever wants to talk about bad stuff. Sometimes it's not bad stuff. It's when you talk about it right now, it's never going to be a bad thing. So it's just another thing to sort of approach and say, let's get used to this, because when we do, it's never going to be in a position to harm us, right? And we want to make sure we do whatever we can to make sure that all these threats ahead become potentialities for just, overcoming adversity and further success, right? Truly.
You can have hard, difficult conversations, but if you have them with love and compassion and empathy, you can actually accomplish wonderful things.
Great things.
It's empathetic conversations, a little bit of love, care about your fellow human being, genuinely care about what they want to care about, not what you want to care about what they want to care about.
Sure.
And, I actually think humanity is a wonderful thing. I think we get focused on the negative. I think, society has a tendency to focus on the sore thumb. You see the thumb hurts, but you forget that you have 9 that work perfectly fine. Because that one thumb hurts. And so, I think we are out of time. We want to thank Max. We want to thank you for joining us on this New Year's. We want to appreciate it. We know you got here just after the balls dropped. We dealt with some strange.
Awesome. It was a lot of fun. Happy, 2022. Wow. The first mental health conversation of the year happening right here, folks. I think it's awesome. That's so cool. That's so great.
And we'd like to have you back, Max. Maybe every couple months we'll come in and have a conversation about what you're doing. We'll take a single topic and dive in maybe next time.
That sounds great. How human, right?
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Max. Thanks, everybody, for watching us. For me, Lubby, and Max, join me next week. You can find all the information for tonight's show on latenightLove.us. You can find more about Max at mental health. What is that blog again, Max?
mentalhealthaffairs.blog.
mentalhealthaffairs.blog. I can't read the screen from this far away. So hopefully this week I get my eyes checked. I get my eye doctor this week, and hopefully we have some good news with that front. And so for me, Lubby, and Max, please remember to love everybody.
Take care.